All right, welcome back, everyone. This is episode 2 of OperaTuneiTea. So, how
Yes,
you doing today,
hello.
Terrence?
I'm well in yourself, minus my wrinkled shirt.
I'm doing okay. I'm literally just kind of dreading looking outside because I heard that the temperature is literally like 9 degrees.
Well, mine says 19 right now. I
Mm.
think it's supposed to go down to 15, I think.
Oh no, I'm not ready for that at all.
Well,
Ooh,
I mean, oh,
so
you know, correction, my phone says 20, so I don't know. Who to believe?
all right, you get that little 1 degree.
Little,
Get that
little
summer
wiggle room.
going.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so today's topic today, everyone, me and Terrence had to kind of sit down and think about this, but I was telling him, I said, I think that our really kind of catapult episode should be going over the legends in our community, those singers that have trailblazed and paved the way for so many of us young singers, current singers, and new singers to come. So I felt that today's episode would kind of be, it's not so much in depth. I just kind of want to list a few accomplishments, any personal experiences you've had with these people, um, music to recommend that they have performed. And I say that we just get it going and just really just kind of touch on our first artist today that we feel kind of deserves their spotlight.
Sounds good.
So,
We probably won't mention every. I know. Let me take that back. I know we won't mention every person. This is going to be a series, because if we mention every person of color, like or from marginalized community that came before us, it would be a very long episode, and we do want
we,
to give everybody their just due. So we'll probably
yes.
do it in state in part one, part two, part three, part four, part five, and so on and so forth. No one person is more important than the other. It's
Mm-hmm.
a matter of time constraint, and yeah. So we'll do a group here, regular episode, group there. That way we can get to as many people as we possibly can.
Yes, I think that that's definitely a perfect way to put it. So, these picks that we've chosen, they do play a very important role in
Agreed.
Terrence and I's career. They've made some type of impact for us to feel that they have attained a level of what we consider legendary to us. And I'm pretty sure we all have our top go-tos. So to consume time, me and Terrence separated 5 and 5. So we'll kind of back off of each other of the individuals we chose to kind of put on the spotlight today. So Terrence, how do you want to do this? Will we go first or how do
Go
you
ahead, go
feel?
ahead. We'll roll right into it.
All right, let's roll right into it this morning. So the legend that I feel that I should talk about first is none other than Mrs. Riri Greased. Miss Riri Greased is an American coloratura soprano. If you're unfamiliar with her work, I recommend right now pause this podcast, go type in Miss Greased and get your life. Get your life. Miss Grease hits home. I know to me and Terrence because she is a graduate of Queens College, where me and Terrence are both attending. And it's something about walking in an environment where someone you admire and has done so much in your community has went there and got her battle scars, something not sounding right, or maybe a piece that finally was that piece that kind of like set her off to go to the next place in life. The thing about Miss Riri Greased is not only is she from the same school that me and Terrence attend, she is also from the environment that me and Terrence live in. She is from New York City. Miss Grease grew up in the East River housing projects, which I thought was very interesting because, in our community, we have those stigmas that when you come from public housing or you're in a position to where you are not given that extra push in life to kind of get in those directions of whether it's a good school or a better environment or access to healthy foods. It's like you could already kind of see, wow, she has a huge kind of plight already set up against her. I mean, being a woman of color in New York City, living in the housing projects, you know. But I mean, I'm telling you, your beginning does not determine your end. And Miss Riri Grease is a true example of that. I really just want to kind of touch on too some of the things that she has accomplished altogether. So Miss Riri Grease not only extended her expertise into opera, into like our world, but she also had that other leg in the door with Broadway. Like Miss Riri Grease also performed with one of our legends as well, Mrs. Eartha Kitt. I know you all are familiar with Eartha because you know don't nobody like Eartha like I know Eartha. So that's my Martin reference. But yes, Mrs. Reese is someone who I feel has paved the way for a lot of color tour sopranos. There's someone else I'm going to talk about who I feel she paved the road directly for. Not only do they share very similar timbre and color and vocal capabilities, it's like you kind of see kind of, you know, where we are because of Mrs. Grease. Terrence, how do you feel about her? I've seen or I've heard a recording of Riri Grease in Mozart's Le Nozze di Figaro. I believe that she was taking on the role of Susanna. And the thing about Miss Grease is that it's like you just know when someone has that sparkle. You just see it. You're just like, ooh, it's just so shiny. It's perfect. The sound is where it's supposed to be. It sits right. It's just, how does it make you feel? Like, I'm pretty sure you've listened to recordings from
Well,
Riri.
vocally, Miss Riri Gris, she of course, yeah, she's done all of the Mozart enas. That's what we call the trio, the Susanna, Despina, and I forget the third one. I'm not a.
Well,
I'm not.
was it Servina was one?
No, it's Susanna, it's Despina. I'm drawing a blank. I cannot remember the third one.
We just gonna call them the Enas.
Oh, okay.
We're gonna take your name.
Despina, Zerlina, and Susanna. There you go.
That's the one. That's the one. Sorry, Mozart.
You know, typically, my brain was not there. Typically, those roles are taken on by, in some cases, very lyric mezzo sopranos because the roles themselves are not. Well, I'll say mezzo sopranos for Despina and Zerlina, but Susanna is normally taken by a soubrette sopranos. But they're all three soubrette roles, you know, soubrette roles. So, but if you know anything about Riri Grist, you know that she's saying, I would say, a lot more challenging music than those three Mozart enas. So the top two for me for her would be the Queen of Shemeka and Le Coq d'Or, and which is more a coloratura piece. Beautiful high E's. She has some beautiful high E's, and also Zerbinetta and Strauss's Ariadna of Naxos. So those two, I heard it in another Strauss piece. I forget the name, but those two are, I think, I mean, her Susanna is great, and the Inas and the Oscar and Verdi's Umbalo and Mascara is great too. But if you want to hear, you know, the full extent of her range, I would definitely go for Zerbinetta, and I would definitely go for the Queen of Shemeka and Le Coq d'Or. That one is a little different. It's that opera is not heard like that. So you're gonna do that one first, and then of course, you know, most people are familiar with Zerbinetta and Strauss's Ariadna of Naxos. But I love her voice. The voice is gorgeous. I saw a masterclass. I wasn't there, but I saw a masterclass of hers, and I love the way she was teaching. The voice is beautiful. Still in her later stages of her life, the voice is beautiful. I mean, you know, sometimes when you hear an aged singer, and no offense to the aged singer, but you know, you can kind of hear the voice lose its wobble. You know, it starts to gain the wobble.
The wear and that wear and tear over time.
But it seems like she preserved her instrument. Like she could go on stage and still sing. Like that's an amazing feat. But that also speaks to her her technical mastery. So
yeah. to carry that over. And still too, I mean, thank God, Riri is still with us. I believe that she is retired in Germany. I think that her husband, last time I checked, was like, I think, an orchestral director. So I
Okay.
know that her life is somehow still involved in the arts. I mean,
Back to
with
some music. Mhm.
with a voice like that, I mean, and also I believe too, I think her debut at the Met, I believe she was in the Barber of Seville.
Oh, she's
If
a
I'm if
Rosina?
I'm
Was it?
yeah,
Okay.
I believe it was Rosina. Yep, it was Rosina. She was literally debut in the Met in 1996. Yeah, she
That
was
can't be right.
Rosina.
90, not no 96.
Oh Lord, 1966. Ooh, Riri. I'm
I'm
like,
about to
hold on, wait a
say
minute.
that it was
Me
definitely not
too.
96.
Them sixes was upside down just now. I'm like, and I had to catch myself, like, hold on, wait a minute. Yeah, 1966, she made her debut at the Metropolitan Opera as Rosina in the Barber of Seville. So
Oh, that's an
I think,
interesting choice. But
yeah, I think that she honestly, and that's probably, if anything too, like, would you consider Riri Grease maybe like, since she has executed so many Mozart arias and roles, do you think that, would you consider her kind of like a Mozart soprano, or maybe just kind of someone who comes to visit but excels in something else?
I think both. I think both. I think she does Mozart well. Every Mozart that I've heard of hers, I think she did the abduction as well. I think she sang Blanchen, if I'm not mistaken. And that's now
Mm-hmm.
that Mozart is difficult because that's when Mozart was writing like those high E's for the soprano and stuff. But
Yeah.
I feel like when you say somebody is a Mozart singer, I would have to let them classify themselves as that. Um,
Okay.
because I feel like it negates her talent as a bel canto specialist or something like that. If you
Mm-hmm.
just render her down to, and there's nothing wrong with being a Mozart, considered a Mozart singer because as we know, Mozart singers it requires a level of finesse that is different from if you're singing, a little more liberating bel canto music. Mozart requires
Mm-hmm.
a lot of finesse. I think that's in turn what makes Mozart a little difficult to sing is the level of finesse it requires, which is why most teachers, you know, give their students Mozart early on because
Yeah.
um it teaches a lot of good technical habits.
It almost feels like sometimes to be that Mozart is kind of like a rite of passage. I
I can
think in
see
a
that.
certain
I can see
for a certain extent. It's like no matter which teacher I've had, they've always recommended you need to sing some Mozart. We need to kind of hear what the voice sounds like singing that repertoire. So, I mean, it's a catapult to what's coming next. I mean, maybe not so, I mean, that's even debatable. We can't even say because
right.
of
I was
like
going to say, well,
musical demands.
one can make the argument that if the voice is not well suited for Mozart, should they still sing it? And you're gonna get yes and no on both sides. We can save that for another. We can save that for another day, which is a very interesting, interesting debate in itself. Because I know a lot. I know a
Hmm.
few singers who feel, their voice doesn't excel in Mozart,
Hmm.
but nonetheless. So yeah, number one we did Miss Reed Bliss, and so we can move right along. And I'm gonna go my first pick. Well, I won't say
Hmm.
first pick because all of my picks, I love all of my picks for all of their reasons. But what I'm going to start with is Miss Jessie Norman. Now,
Ooh. Let me take a sip.
I think we can
Mm.
all hear Jessie Norman's voice in our head. Um, we were lucky enough that we have multiple interviews from her that are still around to this day. And I can just, you can hear her voice, and you can see her smiling. And I always remember this line: "Pigeonholes are for pigeons." I always remember that line. The one thing I will say, and if you think about it, Jesse Norman is probably one of the very, 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 very few sopranos to have a well established international career without ever touching Puccini. She is one of the few sopranos to have ever had such of a big career without touching Puccini. Most sopranos lyric, not really coloratura, because he didn't write coloratura-ish kind of music, but most sopranos from lyric to dramatic have stopped by Puccini. Maybe not specialized, but definitely stopped by. And she is one of the few that have not. Now, we always wanted her to. I would have loved to hear her sing. Only two roles I could really hear her singing. I could hear Turandot in my head because Turandot almost has this dramatic Wagner feel to it, and maybe Minnie in La Fanciulla del West. Those are the only two. I don't really hear, I know most people are going to say Tosca. I don't really hear, her voice is really heroic, so I don't really hear Tosca, and I definitely don't hear anything La Boheme and any of those other ladies. But
yeah,
I would definitely, and I know she was offered to sing Turandot and she declined, but I would have loved for her to sing that. I remember when she made her debut. I believe her debut at the Met was in 83, 84 season. It was the Met Centennial, and she sang the role of Cassandra in Berlioz's Le Troyen, which is that opera is like 5 hours. It's a long opera. They separated into two parts. But yeah, she sang the first portion of it. She sang Cassandra, which is like a low soprano role, high mezzo, low soprano. And we know from Jessie throughout the years that she's dibbled and dabbled. She doesn't sing the highest of the high. Some people consider her mezzo soprano, some people consider her contralto, but she's always built herself as a soprano. But I would say my favorite role, I think the favorite among the people is Ariana of Naxos. I don't think you can hear that opera. Es gibt ein Reich. I don't think you can hear that stuff without hearing her voice in your head. And then she did that long the Unschönes that. If you're gonna listen to that, listen to the scene. The Es gibt ein Reich is good, but Unschönes Wer, if you need a lesson in breath control, try to sing that line. And she did it in one. She did it in one breath. One breath. Now that's the one thing that we must say. The breath control is astounding. I mean, astounding. If you want to look at another example, listen to her. She sang Delilah's aria, Mon Coeur s'ouvre ta voix. She sang that, and the normal tempo that normal mezzos take it at. Dum, 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 dum. But no, not Miss Norman. She did yum, yum, and I mean really just oozed and milked the musical line. I mean, which is what you're supposed to do. I mean, she just and milked it, and it was gorgeous. And she did it so slow, and she did it in one. Her breath control is insane. Okay, but back to I would say my favorite role would have to be. Ooh, that's a tough one for me. I'm gonna go with. I do like, a lot of people don't like her recording of Aida because it's not the traditional Spinto-ish voice, but I thought it was good. But I'm gonna have to say, this is so hard for me to pick. I liked her Judith in Bluebeard's Castle. You know what? I'm gonna stick with Madame Leontyne in what's the name of that opera? The dialogues of the Carmelites, which our greats which is, if you can get your hands on a copy of it. I saw it if you can get your hands on a copy of the dialogues of the Carmelites from the Met production, Maria Ewing, Jesse Norman, Florence Koval, all on one stage.
Oh wow.
If you can get your copy of that, if you can watch it, I think they pulled it off YouTube, so I don't think you can see it on YouTube, or maybe not. But I know if you have the Met subscription, you can watch it on there. You can watch that and watch how those three just dominated that stage. That would be, but I would be remiss if I didn't mention that as much of an accomplished opera singer she was definitely an accomplished leader singer and French melody. I would have to say, of all time, my favorite thing I've ever heard her sing was Schubert's El König. You just
yes. Oh my gosh.
You just don't. How they say you don't compare where you don't compete.
You can't compare.
I mean, I've heard some good ones. I'm not gonna. I've heard some good ones. I've heard Ian Vostridge's for somebody with a light voice. His was good. Mr. Feature Discals, of course, he's a master
Oh yes.
when it comes to leader. But the sheer dramaticism and just I believe, if I'm not mistaken, her Tokyo recital is on YouTube. And I do believe that she sang El König in that one. I'm not sure. But yes, you can definitely find it. Probably my favorite, even over the spirituals, everything. That's probably my favorite thing I've ever heard come out of her mouth.
Yeah, no, Jesse Norman, and I feel like even too, and I'm not trying to take away from our first legend, but it's something about Jesse Norman that to me stands out as almost as enigmatic. Jesse Norman is one of those type of individuals and performers that I remember my first visual of Jesse Norman was, oh, I'm in for a treat. I don't know what this woman is going to sound like, but I know I'm in for a treat. And she is a singer, I feel that it is of a caliber of her own. And I understand that unfortunately we fall into those times of comparing singers and qualities of the singers, but it's almost as if Miss Norman is in such a path of her own, a legacy of her own, that I think she sits outside the realms even of this conversation. Like Miss Norman is warranted in my opinion, an entire episode of accomplishments. Her technique that we're seeing so many singers that I've met literally sitting down trying to mirror Jesse Norman, trying to really kind of embody seeing what she could do. And I mean, she's been spoken so many times during my personal voice lessons from teachers. Even me being a countertenor, I always knew I had a bigger voice. And in my mind, after hearing Jesse Norman, I'm just like, but the repertoire I sing, it doesn't require the Jesse Norman voice, and I always used to say kind of like as a voice of size, a voice of like, it already demands attention. It demands that command already. I mean, I remember seeing a video of her performing Carmen. And I was so like, of course the sound was beautiful, but it was something about her delivery of her acting. And mind you, this wasn't even staged. I believe like there's a recording on YouTube and they're literally just, I think, recording the audio album. So they're literally just playing around at the microphones. And as I'm watching all these subtle movements, the power behind the voice, the delicacy, it almost as if like, even if she's singing something that sounds so, whether it's dramatic or sonorous, there's always this kind of poise, delicacy, professionalism, and everything that she's done. It's just perfectionist to me. And not only that, the woman that the articulation in her, just even her normal speech, she had something that was so hypnotizing to someone where you couldn't help but listen to her. And I mean, and don't get me wrong, as sweet as she was, I could see that Miss Norman has she'll get you together. She'll get you together very, very empathetically and compassionately. a person that makes you think, there is more to just singing. It's almost that mirror of the soul. Why are you here? Why do you sing? So we salute you, Miss Norman, and you are timeless. And it's just, even though I never personally got to meet you or see a stage that you grace, because I know Terrence has. So you was right in the presence of greatness. You were right there with your very eyes.
Yeah, we sang with her. I know we did so we did, there was a cruise ship called the Grand Princess. It was this big deal. And back when I was in the boys choir, they hired us and we sang a they made a version of Amazing Grace for us with Miss Norman.
Mm-hmm.
And she was familiar with us because Miss Norman was a patron of the arts, and she would come. We would do performances at the New York Phil and at Avery Fisher Hall every year, and so she would come, just as sweet and as nice and as regal and everything you think she is. Like she is. Now vocally, we were literally like, the way that they had us, we were on, it was a group, it was a choir, so we was right here. Miss Norman was next to us, and I mean, it was the wall of sound that woman produced. It was just like, and I can hear it in my head, and I was just had to be over 25 or so years ago. I can hear the sound in my head. It was just this wall of just, imagine somebody crushing you with a red velvet cake, because it was it was a wall, but it was a good wall, so it was just like this plush of sound. It was just like, oh my God, like certain people you have to be in a live hall to experience, because I think a video, even with the best equipment, won't capture it. And I told you that in our conversation. I said I've stood right next to you singing, and then when I hear the video, it sounds good, but it does not give me the same vibrancy that I experienced literally standing right next to you while you were singing. Hopefully one day technology could get to a place where because you always see it in the bigger voices. The bigger voices traditionally have more trouble recording. I don't know why it's 2022 and 2021 and 2019 and whatever that we haven't discovered how to make that happen, because the bigger voices, you can't really gauge them off video. I mean, you can get a good idea, but standing next to somebody with a big voice, or being, in the hall, front seat or whatever, and then hearing it in a video, I didn't get it until I saw it firsthand. I'm like, I can hear her voice in my head, and it didn't sound
the way that you heard it in person.
Right. That when I'm looking at the video, I'm like, oh, don't get me wrong, she sounds fabulous either way. And the same with you sound fabulous either way, but I just feel there's a difference. You may not notice it in lighter voices, but the heftier voices, there's a definite difference when you are there live versus hearing a recording. Unfortunately, we haven't caught up to, technology hasn't caught up to where they can literally mirror the circumstances so that you can get a really good feel for how big. And this is throughout history. A lot of the bigger voices, they recorded, but people who heard them live or perform with them would always say, yeah, you think that's something? You should have been in role number 3. Or you think that's something? Imagine sitting next to them, singing. Da, 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 da. So that's my little sidetrack. So I'm going to throw it back to you, Yvonne.
All right. So again, that was Miss Jessie Norman we were speaking about.
Yes.
We encourage you and implore you to please go listen to this singer, this individual, this beautiful human being.
Luckily, there's a lot of luckily there is a lot. She recorded a lot before her passing and before she retired. She recorded a lot. So that we are thankful for, that there's a broad array of music that you can go listen to.
Mm-hmm. All right. All right, Miss Norman. So now we are going to go to our next legend, who I feel also um, has not only lived a life of great artistry and has demonstrated to us that, again, that no matter where you come from or how you look, that, with hard work, consistency, and faith, it's like those are like the ingredients for just success. Like people don't realize that, especially in times of the moments that you feel like giving up right then and there, was the time that change was coming. So I wanted to turn the spotlight to Mrs. Martina Arroyo. And the reason why this hits home to me a bit is because Martina, like myself, is of a multiracial, you know, an individual in this type of field. And I think that, we've become so accustomed to of either seeing that you're either a person that is of color or not, like, either a white soprano or a soprano of color. And I think Martina has come into a time where I think that because of where she falls under in a marginalized community, off the bat, she's going to be embraced by the culture no matter what. I mean, Martina is, of Puerto Rican descent as well as of African descent. But there's something about Martina to me that seemed so familial. I mean, she 100% looks like one of my aunts growing up. That's number one. And especially like as age came, I'm like, yes, ma'am, you are definitely of, of, of the culture. But I want to give a little bit of kind of a backstory on Mrs. Arroyo. So now Mrs. Arroyo was born in 1937. My grandmother literally was born in 1934. So it's kind of funny that, you're seeing two, Afro-Latina women during this time in New York kind of finding their groove. She arose to prominence, and I would have thought that would have been here in the States first, but she actually kind of like got that kind of breakthrough with the Zurich Opera in 1963 to 65. And then it wasn't until after that, then finally, of course, like the Met always does, and I'm not trying to be shady, but I am. It kind of takes you to kind of do the business somewhere else and kind of get that recognition outside of home sometimes. So then home kind of wants you to come back to be like, oh, wait a minute. Like, we totally, we missed an opportunity on this one. But she was employed with the Met as one of the leading sopranos in 1965 to 1978. So literally, to the time that after my mom was born. So Mrs. Arroyo also stands another thing to me as well too, because she also attended a CUNY school. So this is the thing too, that when people kind of look down, and there are people out there who do look down on city schools and the caliber of artists or the level of education that we receive, even though granted we're not like a typical conservatory. But Mrs. Martina, Mrs. Arroyo, she attended Hunter College, and I believe that she majored in like Romanticism languages. So it's kind of funny to see that opera really not being a primary kind of goal that she wanted. And she's also in a biography, I believe, too, that I read up on her. She kind of got scolded by her voice teacher. And I think, like, I'm not sure we all could be there. I mean, sometimes we'll, like, kind of have an instance where your voice teacher is kind of like, hey, shape up. Like, what's going on? Do you really want this or do you not? And Martina actually had a situation like that. Granted, beautiful voice, but sometimes it takes those people who we entrust with something that we care for so much about and invest so much time, attention to health. Sometimes it does take an advocate or someone who truly does believe in you to kind of say, hey, wake up. And Martina states that, that entire time she always considers singing kind of like a hobby, something I'm good at, but, I really didn't feel like anything was really going to come of it. And, her being able to kind of have a teacher, and I believe her instructor at the time was Marinka Gjurwik. I'm not sure if that's how her last name is pronounced, but she was a voice teacher to be reckoned with at the time during Martina's time. So it really kind of like, was that transition to the turn of greatness. Me personally, seeing someone who I feel such a close bond with visually always did something to me. Always was just like, wow, like, because there is a time too where Puerto Ricans face discrimination specifically in New York City, since so many of them, came there from the island. So to see this love of music and still continues to live on, even with her foundation. I think we even spoke one time too, Terrence. I think that we both at one point was interested in auditioning for the program and trying to kind of, take that avenue with Mrs. Arroyo, who actually does, specifically in the city, has her hands involved in quite a few things. She has a long list of accomplishments with social work and making sure that the people in the city have access to basic human rights, to basic things that we just need to survive, specifically in a city where you're paying like 2 mortgages on your rent. So, it is a place of deep gratitude I have for Mrs. Arroyo, a place of, self-assurance to see that, wow, like with, when you really do truly kind of like get the reins on your life and decide that, this is something I really want to do. It's not just something I'm good at. It's something that I'm called to do, as greater things are to come. But yeah, how do you feel about Mrs. Arroyo, Terrence? Like, do you have like, what are your thoughts about her?
Well, I'll go to the voice. I'm about the voice. So, she has I think they categorize her as a spinto soprano, and I would have to. I could say I agree. Of the role she sang, for me, I love when a big voice can move. I love when a heftier voice, like the excitement of hearing a voice like Martina's, take on, a long run of 16 a long melisma or something like that, and do some drills and some coloratura. I love, and it's clean. I love hearing big voices move around because it tells you something about their technique, because as we know, it's harder for a big voice to be agile if it's not something that they worked on. It's just naturally easier for a lighter voice to be flexible with less effort. So for me, I loved her Leonora in El Trovatore. The voice is just, she's a spinto, but I feel like she taps into her floated pianos and pianissimis. The voice is just gorgeous. I know on the more dramatic side, she sang some Wagner, some Elsa, and Tannhäuser. I know she did. Even on the lyric side, on the Mozart side, she sang Donna Anna and Donna Elvira in Don Giovanni. So she's well versed, and that goes to show you, if you can censorize your technique, and it'll work for you singing many different styles. But I would have to say my favorite. I almost feel like you can't say you have a favorite Aida, or else Leontyne gonna come jump out and beat you up. No, I'm joking. I'm gonna go a little bit more obscure. She sang the role of Valentine in Meyerbeer's The Huguenots. And that requires a lot of flexibility. And like I said, I love to hear a big voice move around. And not only that, I would say Verdi's I Vespri, she sang Elena in that. And that was another good one for me as well. So those are my picks.
Another thing about Miss Martina that I thought was interesting. So Mrs. Martina has been regarded as a soprano who has sung, if not almost, all of Verdi's major roles for the voice type.
Uh,
I'm seeing, well, from what I'm seeing that spectators have said. The thing is I'm not sure if you're even familiar with this because I
well,
wasn't.
okay, so of his main operas,
Yeah.
I could say, oh, well, see, it's hard to say because I don't think she did Nabucco,
Okay.
but it depends on what you consider that role, because that role is, some people consider a dramatic coloratura role. Some,
Mm-hmm.
I've never heard it regarded as a spinto role. So okay, so of his main, yeah, I know for sure she's done Aida, Amel,
It's
Amelia and Umbalo. I know
mm-hmm.
she did. I think she did both Leonora's La Forza del Destino and Il Trovatore, and I'm missing one.
I can't think of it off the top of my head, but even going back to Aida, I mean, a lot of people don't realize is that when Brigitte Nielsen was on the net, Mrs. Arroyo stepped in for for Mrs. Nielsen. And there's a saying that Martina says that no one steps in for Miss Bridget Nielsen.
I
You
mean,
know what I
if you
mean?
know who she is, then you already know.
So she literally just like, to just see what I'm talking about with opportunity, you know, she's filling in shoes for somebody during that time is iconic. Like
But not, I
the
would have, but before Aida, I would have preferred to hear Martina sing Aida versus
ooh,
Birgit. If it was
mm-hmm,
something more Wagnery, yeah, I would have taken Birgit. Or
mm-hmm,
something more Straussy, I would have taken Birgit, because her voice is very um steely, and it's very, in a good way. It's a
yeah.
very pointed squealo. Um, but I think that was her blessing in disguise.
Yeah, no, literally. You have to, I'm telling you,
That
I'm a
became one
firm
of her
believer.
signature. That became one of her signature roles.
I'm a firm believer sometimes that coincidences don't exist, that sometimes in life you are meant to be where you're supposed to be at that time.
Completely
Because
agree.
I mean, to step in and then of course like you're all eyes on you. So Martina, again, hats off. We completely, we are examples of people who stand on your shoulders. So
Absolutely.
everything that you have given towards the craft, that so far all of these incomparable legends, we salute you. So I think we should move to the next so everybody can get some fair share. I believe Terrence, it is on you.
Yes.
So
So we're gonna start with our first gentleman.
ooh,
And
yes.
this man, for what he's accomplished, is just the most humbled. Let me tell you something. Humility and humbleness goes a long way. I know in our line of work, you know, people don't favor humility all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But in our line of work, I think that will make a difference in a conductor saying, you know, let me call this person versus that person. You
Yeah.
know, if they had a choice in the matter, or they have a project coming up and they enjoy working with you because you're humble and you know, it goes. People understand in this business it goes a long way. So with that being
Mm-hmm.
said, I'm gonna go with Simon Estes. So Simon Estes, he's one of the groundbreakers, and the reason he's a groundbreaker is because he was the first black male to sing a leading role in Bayreuth. Now, if you don't know what Bayreuth is, that's like the pinnacle of where they perform Wagner operas. And so he
Mm-hmm.
debuted in Bayreuth as the Flying Dutchman. And so if you know Mr. Estes, he does his Wagner. Wagner, he does a lot of Wagner. Beautiful bass voice, bass baritone. I think he considers himself a bass baritone. Um, Beautiful voice, just commanding stage presence, um, intelligent singer, and all that good stuff. So, interesting story between Miss Leontyne right here and Simon is that when he did get invited to sing at the Met, I believe it was 82, he got invited to sing at the Met. You know, they offered him a contract. He was debuting as, I want to say, Herman in Tannhäuser. Leontyne warned him. She said, I hope you're ready because you're going to face more discrimination as a black man than I did as a black woman.
Oh, wow.
Warned him. Now, Simon never really referred to any of those stories per se. But he does. There's an interesting interview out there between him and Larry Brownlee. Lawrence Brownlee interviews him, and I mean, I had to catch myself. I think I teared up at least 4 or 5 times. If you can catch it, I know Lawrence has it on his Facebook page. I don't know if it's on YouTube, but I saw the interview and it was gorgeous. Okay, so back to the vocals. So he's more of like a dramatic bass baritone, I would consider him. He also, in 1985, when the Met did its version of its first performance of Porgy and Bess, he sang Porgy, and if I'm not mistaken, I will check. I believe Grace Bumbry sang Bess that time. That's first production. If you want to hear,
and I think he did. Was it Grace Bumbry or was it Roberta Alexander?
It was probably Grace, if I'm not mistaken, that did the debut, the 85,
okay.
The 1985 performance.
Okay. Was that with the who that was with the Met?
That was with the Met when the Met did it the first time. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay. I think I'm thinking of Berlin Radio, the symphony orchestra. I think.
Yeah, when the Met did it the first time, I'm almost 100% sure that it was him and Grace Bumbry. Yeah, so vocally for me, speaking of Grace Bumbry, if I had to pick something that he sings all of his stuff well, but there was something he and Grace Bumbry sang a concert version of Aida's duet between her dad and her, I believe it's Ciel mio padre. And when I tell you he sang the walls off that place, that man sang the walls off that place. So much so that even on YouTube, if you go in the comments, there are baritones and basses saying, I wish I could sing that particular this particular line that he just, oh my God, he annihilates. And there are people like, I just want to sing that line just like you. Like, I don't even care if they say I'm copying you, just the sheer, I mean, it was just, if you have a minute and you want to hear what his voice can do, yes, listen to his Wagner because his Wagner is very, very good. You know, he did a lot of Wagner, so he's very good at it. But his Omanazro in Aida, that duet he did with Grace Bumbry, if you're looking for the video, when you search it, I believe Grace Bumbry has on this beautiful red dress. Is that video? Oh my God, it is bar none. And I believe he also sang for Leontyne's farewell. He was her Omanazro when she did her farewell Aida in '85. But yeah.
No, you know what's so interesting is as soon as you mentioned that word of advice that Leontyne had given him, being employed at the Met, I just want to delve a little bit into that because that literally is, I think, a conversation that still has some standing today. I'm not saying that we have not come far, but that is a discussion amongst singers that still, specifically marginalized singers and singers of color, that turns in our heads sometimes. Are they not going to like me because of how I look? Am I not going to get the role because of this pigmentation I was born with that I had out of all control of my own? And this is something that I hope that our allies, if you're out there listening, understand that we all go into auditions and aspire to receive contracts based on of our merit and on our hard work. But that is something that your brothers and sisters kind of walk a path alone a bit, is that as hard as we go in with the intentions of saying, oh my gosh, I made sure, my intonation was correct. I made sure that I had the rhythm down. I make sure that I've known this piece through in and out. And if the actual composer was right here in front of me, he probably would just embrace me and be like, thank you so much. But we also have those thoughts in the back of our mind to say, should I even try? I may be one of two. How is that gonna go? But I want to say the actual quote that Mrs. Price told him. She spoke to him about the difficult road ahead, and she also, our own greats, received death threats. I'm not sure if this is something that we all throughout, and this is what I mean, that when we stand on these heroes' shoulders, it is not just on their talent alone, but it is on their resilience. What if Miss Price said, you know what, this is too much for me and I'm not doing this anymore, and chose to do something else with her life? I mean, these are literally, the first in command that are taking those heavy blows for us so that it's a less impact when it's our time to come there. But she said to Esther, she said, Simon, it's going to be even more difficult for you because you're a black man.
Oh, you found the quote.
The
you
discrimination.
See, I know my stuff. I know my stuff.
Mm-hmm. The discrimination will be greater.
See?
You have a beautiful voice.
Right.
You are musical, intelligent, right, independent, and most of all, you look good. You handsome. So she told him that these are all the ingredients that is warranted of horrible discrimination that is going to come towards you. And look at this individual, who we gonna call Uncle Simon, because that the aunties and the uncles, like Uncle Simon, literally, as much as that could have been something that deterred him from doing it, he probably must have saw that fire in Auntie Price's eyes and was just like, you know what? No, if my sister is out here taking the lashes, it is time that I do the next for what, who's next to come after me, so that we get these great bass baritones that we get to listen to today. And I'm telling you, there's a plethora of phenomenal African-American men, bass baritones out there who literally, I guarantee you, like if they really wanted to shake the world up, all they got to do is sing together. They probably gonna start an earthquake by themselves. So I just think that, thank you, Mrs. Price. And even for Simon, it's just kind of, they don't understand how just a small gesture is so powerful, especially, it really is that one pebble in the puddle and the waves just kind of like, But yeah, your stuff, Terrence. You over here quoting things.
I've been around a little bit. And one correction, not correction, I had to piggyback earlier. Yes, we are students, but we are returning students.
Yes,
I want to make that distinction because they probably look like they kind of look old. We're gonna touch on this in a later podcast. But yes, we are older students. We are returning students. We both went to school earlier on in our life, and we returned to school. So for those of you who can afford it and you feel discouraged, please don't. I was nervous. I'm sure Yvonne was nervous at first. We were around all these 20, 18, 19-year-olds. But I encourage you to do what your heart tells you to do. It's not easy because, when you're old and grown, you got to work and pay bills and all that. But I promise you, when you do the work and you walk off that stage, it'll pay you back. So I just wanted to make that. I think it's your turn anyway, right? Yeah, it's your turn.
Yes, it is my turn. So I think that it would be right, since you have decided to go with finally a gentleman. I think that it's time that I kind of come back with another gentleman. And of course, I was sitting here and I was thinking about this because I'm just like, it's the right thing to do. So the individual that I will be speaking on now is someone who is very dear to me. I don't think that he'll even understand how dear he is to me, but his name is Mr. Derek Lee Reagan. Being a countertenor, um, Derek it's funny because Derek to me has always kind of been like that older role model in my mind. Like, like when people always say that cliche saying, like, we're really best friends, or like if I had to pick someone who I feel I would hit it off with would be this person. Um, Derek Reagan is an African American countertenor, born in New York, raised in New Jersey. Like many of us, boys choirs, surrounded by music at a very early age, very musical person. Originally, I believe he was also a pianist before he was a singer. Um, Mr. Reagan is, in my opinion, I consider him like the father of African American countertenors. I say this because in a time where kind of early music, and we hear this every year. It's semi-baroque people out there. Every year, oh my gosh, we're on the verge of kind of collapsing and people aren't paying. No, it's not. It's not that. It's just, the audiences just keep changing over time. But he was definitely a force to be reckoned with. I don't want to go too much in like his backstory because we could do this all day. And if you're interested in learning more about Derek Reagan, there is a beautiful documentary via YouTube called Aria and Pasta. Literally like aria as a piece and pasta, yes, as you eat. They literally talk about Terrence, we could actually maybe even coin the idea a little bit, down the line, but they literally cook pasta and talk to opera singers and ask about their lives. And it's full documentaries. It's very sweet. But he gives a full account of his life musically. But the thing about Derek is, at a time where seeing people of color in Baroque opera was something that was not common. It wasn't. And specifically being dominated by countertenors that aren't of color. And it's not to take away from their accolades or take away from accomplishments that they've done because, I too stand on their shoulders as well too as being a countertenor. But Derek brought something a little different to the table, in my opinion. As you know, singers of color, and this is another episode I think that's warranted as well too as a topic, is timbres, colors, certain isms and qualities of the voice. And I feel it's grounds for us to say and to bring that up because everything else across the board is branched into a spectrum. Look at color. So just like, okay, so if we want to go a little deeper and so, there are certain qualities of voices that I feel are different, whether depending on your cultural heritage. And that could be from listening to certain types of music, things that kind of been built in the subconscious. So I could honestly say, growing up biracial and having attended churches of Baptist backgrounds, Methodist backgrounds, Pentecostal backgrounds, there's a certain twang in the sound. There's a certain emotion that you are connecting towards that music, whether it's spirituals, whether it's something hymnal. But I feel that when Derek Reagan came onto the scene, there was almost as if this little diamond came out. Like all these like jewels that were kind of looking the same. He approached that music, that repertoire, in my honest opinion, with a new sense of what we call in Baroque, the pathetique, where people in that time period, it was, of course, virtuosity was great. Yeah, you're singing a whole bunch of notes. It's beautiful, great. But their biggest concern was, are you able to evoke some type of emotion out of the listener? These composers were intelligent. The word painting, look at the progression to where we are now. Like you'll literally listen to something, whether it's Verdi, like in my opinion, even as Verdi does something, and mind you, that's not an area that I tend to sit in. But when I am surrounded by listening to the music, you cannot help but it evokes emotions. When those characters are in pain, you are in pain. And that's something that we see from our predecessors as composers and music in general. But getting back to Derek, so Derek was originally discovered, I want to say in his documentary as well, there was a woman who heard him sing, and she became so enamored with his voice that she actually wrote him a check. She was like, you could either go to Europe and meet this person and so and sing, or you could use that money for whatever you want. So I mean, that's like that's like not the best ultimatum in life. Like literally the coincidence, like, here's the money. Either go live your dream or just say this isn't what you really want. And you know that boy gonna catch that check. He gonna go live that dream out. Because
Okay.
I mean, if you're really looking at the story now, like Derek, albums after albums of revived Baroque operas. Not only I think Derek kind of gets slighted in a way when it does come to his vocal capabilities. I mean, when you're, if you guys are interested, I would encourage you and implore you again, go on Spotify, go on YouTube, type in Derek Lee Reagan. You are going to be in for a treat. Um, Derek revived a lot of Handel's operas. They were still being performed, but now there was kind of this tone that kind of rivaled those other treble voices on the stage because, unfortunately, just like any voice, there has been a progression of what countertenors are supposed to sound like. And this is open to debate with all early music specialists or vocalists of, the use of straight tone or vibrato. Should I add kind of this breathy quality to my coloratura? Should I conjoin it? Is portamento allowed? Is it not? There's certain things where I think that that's all open for debate, and a lot of it I think is speculation. But Derek brought Derek into the Baroque and shaped it in a way to what it is supposed to be. That is the type of repertoire that when they write the reviews about you, it is not as much as, of course they're going to nitpick how you look, but as going through history and seeing, they were so concerned about, did he invoke me emotionally? The degrees of pitches and notes, how did he approach them? Were they approached for virtuosity alone? And I think that when listening to Derek, it strikes the mind, like, are you familiar with his music, Terrence? Like, what was your first thought when you heard Derek Lee Reagan?
Well, see, I didn't know whether he was a countertenor or a high tenor, and I'm gonna tell you why. Not because of me not knowing what a countertenor is because when I first heard him, he was on Three Mo Tenors with Roderick and Thomas Young. And because it was they did like a medley of things. They did jazz, they did light gospel, they did and they did some spirituals. So that was my very first time hearing him sing. And so I wasn't sure if he was just like a high tenor because he sang, he didn't sing above the staff. Well, when I say above the staff, I mean tenor above the staff. He didn't sing it in full out head voice, but he didn't. It wasn't hooty as well. It was almost like a mixed kind of thing going on. So I couldn't figure out what he was. Following that, it piqued my curiosity, and I looked him up, and then I heard the Moses Hogan album that he did. And clear as day on the title of the thing, it says Derek Lee Reagan countertenor. So I said, oh, okay. And then, of course, once I heard that, then I was like, okay, he's a countertenor. Sounds good. There was a point where you didn't hear a lot of countertenors singing. I won't say high, because it didn't go too high, but there was a certain point where if it passed a C or a D, you didn't really hear countertenors singing that until he came, and then after him, of course, David Daniels and the rest of those guys. But when he did the Spirituals album, he was hitting like F's and G's, and I'm like, okay. Now I come from a background I come from a boy choir background, so I know it's not impossible. Like I know people to this day who can. They're not, build kind of tenors, but they can definitely sing high up in their in the higher portions of their voice. Um, but yeah, I was amazed. I like his voice. I like a versatile voice, and his voice is
Mm-hmm.
versatile. I didn't hear much of his early, early stuff until after, way after. But for me, you can catch me in the first 60 seconds, whether you singing Handel, uh, Gluck, Purcell, Hogan, Work, Verdi, and he caught me in the first 30 seconds, which prompted me to look him up. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then his handle was just as good as his Moses Hogan spirituals. And so that for me, that's what it was. Like, I know for you it's different because there's an anomaly around countertenors. I don't care if you're a countertenor, a bass, a second soprano, a third alto. If you don't catch me in that first 60 seconds with what you're singing, I don't care if you got three notes to sing. You better make us know it with them three notes. And that's what made
Mm-hmm.
me there's some. But you know what? I do hear a lot of us who sing spirituals. I wouldn't say it's stylistically correct, but a lot of us who sing spirituals and we kind of sometimes slide into the rest of our
Mm-hmm.
repertoire with it. Not as I think, I'm not saying do that. Please don't say that's not stylistically correct. But however, you can hear. I don't mind it a little bit. You can just hear the. I don't want to say soul because our counterparts have soul too, but it's just something different that the ancestors gave us that you can
Mm-hmm.
hear it. I would listen to his Umbra Mai Fu versus one of his counterparts because there's something else there. There's this
Yes.
is this is it's versus bum 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 bum.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yeah.
something there, and I think that's what attracted me to his voice. I was more surprised that his agility was the way it was because I hadn't heard him, sing that way. So when I heard the agility, I was like, and
Yeah.
then when you told me, because I had seen Farinelli at least, I grew up in the music background, so we watched it for, like music history and stuff like that. So I
Mm-hmm.
had seen it plenty of times. I never looked at the credits. So when you told me that he did some of the vocals for it,
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh my God, like that is so dope. And I'm not
Yeah,
saying
no.
the
Mm-hmm.
company didn't, um, I'm not saying that whoever was in charge of marketing didn't do their job or nothing like that, but nowhere ever until you told me did I ever know that he did. It's probably one of the most famous because we don't get from musicians, and we gotta change that too. We don't get a lot of movies. Like, come on, can we get some movies?
Oh, there. Any directors out there?
Yeah,
Y'all
can
need
we
to
get
start
some
making
movies,
these.
people? This guy right here, he
Mm-hmm.
need a movie. The lady next to
Yep.
me need a movie.
Right her
Lady
on the
down here need a
knee.
movie.
Yep.
The
Mm-hmm.
guy above me need a movie. So when you told me that he did it, and of course I know the higher portion, you told me he spliced with a coloratura, which is fine. I don't really care about that. But the fact that he was on it and nobody like said, like, oh, and by the way, the most famous kind of to the movie, Farinelli, Derek did the background, did some of the background
Mm-hmm.
vocals for. Like, I would think, that would be something that would be more well known, especially me, because I pride myself in knowing not all, but a lot of my people's history when it comes to music. And I did not
Yeah.
know that at all until you
Yeah.
told me.
Yeah, no, the thing about Derek, and that's one of the things too, that movie, even though it's a film and it is somewhat kind of, they flowered some things up. I mean, historically, certain things are accurate, and then certain things are kind of like, okay, this is the Hollywood aspect of it. But there were certain things about when I heard the voice, the movie I could care less for. It really was this voice that I was listening to
Agreed.
because
Agreed.
this was a time where countertenors that have been kind of sitting on, and I'm talking about my other brothers, James Bowman, Michael Chance. We could even go a little further to even, who they say kind of like dated it for us. It was Alfred Deller. But you know, Derek brought something that, and I'm not saying that, the rest doesn't matter. Just start with Derek. Derek brought a different thought of what countertenors were able to do. This, because those singers to me, I feel like they tried to remain so stylistically correct. And I think Derek came in with, yes, I understand, but the music is calling for this. This is when I'm looking at, and if you're looking at the life of Farinelli, I mean, like you're looking at, I mean, we're talking to someone who holds this past singer in such high regard. Like, here even in my apartment, I have a huge like 80-inch photo painting of Farinelli in my living room. Like it's such a conversational starter when people come here like, who is that? And I'm like, oh, let me let you know. And to see Derek take on someone who I feel is like one of the godfathers of opera. And I mean, that's another segment I would love for us to talk about and touch upon too, is the castrati and just seeing kind of their influence and how it even is kind of implemented in today's operas, and we don't kind of really understand or see why or how. But Derek did something to where I was listening to Alfred Deller thinking that was the sound they wanted. But then here comes Derek Reagan singing some Vivaldi cantatas, and I'm like, who is this mezzo? I'm like, there were certain times where I couldn't even clock that it's like, wait a minute, is this a man or is this a woman? This seems like just a really refined mezzo that has kind of this silvery smooth bottom. And then once you hear the agility in the voice, I do hope and hope to one day like finally meet him in person. I know with COVID, like things are just even so crazy now, even now with
where's he located now?
the last time I spoke to Derek, I believe that he was in New York City, but I
Oh, so we need to make that
remember,
happen. We got to make that
yeah,
happen.
and he actually performed recently. A dear friend of mine actually sent me a program of him performing Handel's Messiah, but because it was such in a time of like crunch that going towards where Dido was and then our rehearsals, so I literally wasn't
Oh no,
able
you
to
were
kind of
supposed to
like,
go to. Well, we did have a. We To be fair, we did have that week leading into Dido was just insane.
oh, it was insane, but it
The
was,
finals and all.
you know, it'll be interesting. You know what I would hope for, and I'm going to put this on the world. Since Queens College, supposedly we do a Baroque program every summer. I think it would have just been phenomenal if somehow they could work out something to have him, someone who is a New York native, maybe not raised here, but of New York. So, you're in New Jersey. It's just right across the water. Yeah. So it literally is something that I feel would be awesome to do.
Well,
But let me
even have
just
him come
really,
to a master class. Like,
or a master class. And there's so much. I mean, like he was definitely Derek was one who on a full recording of Orfeo and Eurydice, him making that kind of that staple marker as Orfeo, and not only that, even into some modern operas as well too. Derek really has made with the movie deal. I believe he had a concert with three countertenors a few years ago. So I could see that he's still somewhat active vocally. But I mean, I would just love that. That's a like a
you
interview
don't, you
within
don't,
its own.
you don't get, you don't get. I've only seen, and this is so sad because I love watching master classes, especially from certain teachers. But you don't see countertenors in general. Let alone the only one that I did see was who do master classes, and I would love for
Mm-hmm.
him to impart his knowledge um and experience, not just as a countertenor, as a singer in general.
Yeah.
Don't see it. You just don't. You normally see your typical, and there's nothing wrong with that. Your typical sopranos and basses and tenors and
Mm-hmm.
whatever mezzos, and you just don't see the countertenors coming to do master classes. Like even the guys before us, before you guys, James Bowman, those guys, um
Mm-hmm.
uh um
Michael Chance
Maida,
is another one.
yeah,
Yeah.
Maida,
Majin
Chan,
Meta. Mm-hmm.
um those guys, you don't even really see them that much do master classes. So I would love for him to do a master class. I would have to say I'm sure he's been asked, because and if he hasn't, that's a travesty.
Yeah, no, it
I
is a
would hope
travesty.
that he declined because of maybe his schedule or something like that. But hopefully he was even asked in the first place.
And not even that, I think too, I mean, to me, Derek Reagan, the reason why he's even involved in this Legends episode is because he is coming in a time where he was the only one. I mean, mainstream, that if I was to look at Derek Lee Reagan, there really was no one of color that kind of was rival him in the way. And I'm not saying that because he was the best, because we all know opportunities during that time comes. It's a rarity. I mean, look at it even in his environment. But the things that he did, and how embraced he was with the early music community, and kind of being that kind of, that trendsetter in a way of kind of like, okay, so now there's, putting countertenors on the map. Not only that, even with like Hollywood deals, but to just this idea that we don't just we are involved in everything. You know what I mean? It's like we are visible and capable of doing anything and everything as the next human being. So, Mr. Reagan, we spent quite some time on you
Yeah,
because
I was going to say
you're
we'll have
so.
to tumble through these next three.
Yeah, but we salute you, and you are loved, and you are so, so, so well admired. So thank you. And I believe it's your turn, Terrence. I think, yes,
Yes.
we're on
So
your number
since you
3.
did the father of the black tenors, I'm gonna do the father of the black tenors, and you all
Yes.
know it's none other than the man himself, George Shirley. I mean,
Oh.
George Shirley, the first black tenor to have it to sing a leading role at the Met. And people negate this. This is not to take away from Robert McFerrin and Marion Anderson. While they were before George, they were both singing supporting roles. Marion Anderson sang Ulrika, and I believe Robert McFerrin sang Amonazro, versus Mr. Shirley sang Ferrando. So he actually had a leading role. And excuse me, Così fan tutte, Mozart. So
Mm-hmm.
for me, I mean, you don't get more legendary than George Shirley. He, the voice itself, we have so. I don't know if I don't know if my voice is his long lost child. I don't know. You hear his voice. He sings Mozart. Well, sang a lot of Mozart in his heyday, but his voice sounded different from Fritz Wunderlich and Francisco Areza and those other guys, those other Mozart specialists, because he had this tint to his voice. And there's I'm not even going with the race thing. I'm talking about, like, there was a baritonal quality to
Mm-hmm.
his Mozart, which added a little more depth, because for me, those Mozart guys, the trio, Ferrando and Don Ottavio, it could be a little on the boring side for me. For me, my Mozart guys are Tito and Idomeneo. Those are my two
Mm-hmm.
favorite Mozart guys. When I heard Mr. Shirley do Idomeneo, I was like, okay, I gotta sing that. Like that, I feel that for Mozart, that would be my thing, Idomeneo. he just, I mean, the voice was nice, it was round, it was flexible, and it still had this real earthy um quality to it. Um he also sang Peleus in Debussy's opera, which is like some people consider it a high baritone role, some people consider it a low tenor role. Um
Mm-hmm.
he also he you know he does that from time to time. He sings those borderline roles. Um, and I think that my voice sits in really the same place that his voice sits at. Um, we can visit, we just don't stay. So
I could definitely see that. I could definitely see
um,
that.
I mean, I'm not gonna get carried away with all of his accomplishments because the man is decorated upon
Mm.
decorated upon decorated. He's still around today. He gives master classes through. I know he teaches in Michigan. He taught at the same school. Him and before she passed, him and Shirley Verrett. Could you imagine having Shirley Verrett and George Shirley in the same damn
Insane.
school? I mean, like
Wait, what school
I
was
was.
this? Wasn't it? Well, he was teaching at Jacobs, wasn't he? He was at the
No, he was. They were
Indiana.
at I believe Western Michigan.
Oh, okay.
Him and Shirley, and I mean, I should have went there just for that, but I don't like to follow. I would probably think it's a little weird. My dream is to one day. I was close, and I'll tell that story if I ever get an interview. I'll tell the story. I was close to doing a master class. I didn't quite make it with him, but I would love to. I don't traditionally. I like watching master classes. I don't like being in them. They just, when people pick you apart like that, you just got to make sure it's
You got
you
tough skin.
you got tough skin. Well, hopefully the person is doing it with love. They're not. And
Yeah.
I've seen his master class. I've watched a lot of his interviews, and I mean, thank God he's still with us.
Yes.
Um, one thing I will say is that interestingly enough, he was offered to do Porgy and Bess a lot, right? Because he's a black tenor.
Yeah.
But he didn't do it until he was well established. I
In the
think
bag.
like in the later portion of his career. I don't remember specifically when, but I know he's saying in the later portion of his career. But he had already, debuted at the Met, debuted here, debuted there, sang all his Mozart stuff, sang, some of his Verdi stuff, sang some of his Puccini. He was already done by the time he did that. And he's very, very philanthropic as well. He's all about, reaching back and pulling the people up with him. So Mr. Shirley, hopefully one day, you know, I would love to meet you and pick your brain if, time and God allows. But definitely one of my top three role models in music and in life. Period. So thank you, Mr.
Listen.
George Shirley. Oh, if you wanna,
Yeah.
if you real quick, I'm sorry, Yvonne. You wanna hear him
Okay.
sing? My favorite recording of him, also one of my pieces, For del Mar,
Yes, I was gonna
Idomeneo.
say that.
If you want to hear it, there are plenty of versions out there. Plenty of people do it well. Please listen to his version. Beautiful. He knocks it out the park as expected.
hmm No, I believe he's well into his 90s. I think he's almost shy into his 80s. He's almost shy into
Definitely in his
90s.
80s because Shirley passed
Oh,
away in her 70s. Yeah, so yeah.
yeah, no, 1934. He was born the same year as my grandmother. So they're literally, I think they're, ooh, grandma don't get mad at me, but I think she's 89 now. But yeah, no, the thing about George Shirley is I was not familiar with George Shirley until about, I want to say, maybe 11 years ago. George Shirley, and it's so funny because it's countertenor related. There was a documentary on countertenors, like a small clip it. And I believe at the countertenor at the time, if my memory serves me right, they were speaking on was Philippe Jarouski. And George Shirley um, gave a huge lecture on the countertenor voice. he literally, to the point where he was talking about, he even had like a voice, like a larynx, like a literally like a cadaver, a whole form of like the voice physiology right in front of him. And he was speaking about how countertenors, maneuver the voice, how it works. And he was so fascinated by it. And I believe, the one who we shall not name, um, there was a specific countertenor who studied with George Shirley. And I mean, the proof is in the pudding. If I'm looking at him, seeing how this man is not only talented himself, but a great mind and intellect, and knowing so much about the craft. Like, like I'm talking about to like of why the cells function the way they do within the voice. So George Shirley again, just an amazing. You played that Mozart aria for me, and when I'm telling you, when I hear that cadenza at the end, maybe spit my tea out, because I am just like, I'm normally listening to like coloratura sopranos, kind of surprise and give a little shot, like, oh, that was pretty. But when I heard this, I was like, oh, I can only imagine what it sounds like in person.
Oh.
All right, so should we move to the next one, Terrence?
Yeah, I think it's on you.
All right, so I feel like now I'm kind of going to become full circle with this next artist that I'm choosing to pick. And that is, in my opinion, and also another incomparable legend, Mrs. Kathleen Battle. Kathleen, I actually had the pleasure of meeting Miss Battle at a dinner party at Minton's, which is jazz bar. I believe it's on the west side. It's been so many years ago. I'm not even sure if they're still open. I think we were having a conversation about this, about like
I
you always
remember
wanted
that
to
place.
go.
Yeah.
The food
A
was
lot of my
amazing.
colleagues went there. I just never went.
Yes, no, it was, I actually, again, had no idea what I was getting into, because moving to the city, I really didn't know many singers of color. So it was like, literally, that was kind of like that transition moment of being around people who look like me. So I'm just like, oh, wow, this is great. And I kind of knew Miss Battle was coming, but I wasn't sure if she really was going to come. But I met my really good friend there that night, Kevin Thompson. Shout out to you, Kevin, who's a phenomenal bass. I mean, if you this man, just his laugh alone will literally have your soul jump a little bit. Like, oh, what was that? So just a very unique individual and a beautiful voice. Um, he attending there, I actually got a chance to meet Kathleen Battle, and of course, like, you're starstruck, so you're kind of like, oh my gosh, like, I don't want to seem like this big fan, like, what is she gonna say? And then of course, like, with Kathleen, where Kathleen walks, I'm sorry, I love you, Auntie Kathleen, but there is controversy that follows you, and unnecessary controversy at this point. So literally, and this goes to show that sometimes your thoughts on someone really don't kind of like always make the perfect sense or are true. When I met her, she was extremely kind to me. I didn't feel it was from a place of kind of like, this you're in the presence of greatness. So, she literally, and I had a dear friend of mine that were literally like, Miss Battle, this is Ivan Feliciano. He's a soprano. And when he threw that out, I was like, oh, is she gonna like that? How's she gonna feel about that?
Right.
And she literally looked at me and she said, keep going, keep singing. And I'm kind of paraphrasing because, again, I was still so starstruck, because I'm like, is she talking to me right now? Like, and I literally left out of there with my chin a little higher. It's kind of like that saying that my grandmother used to tell me, chin up, head down, meaning you keep that chin up to let kind of like you're worthy. But walk in there with that humility and let them know that, it's kind of like, I don't sit from a high standard. Like, well, not from a high standard. I don't sit from a high seat looking down. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I kind of want to go in a little bit to talk about with Kathleen. So Kathleen was born in August. She is a Leo. I just wanted to say that because I totally get it from you, Kathleen, perfectionist. She was born in Portsmouth, Ohio. And she grew up in the church. As I'm looking at her bio, I think her father, like many of our dads, growing up, that time period, the men are literally bringing home the bacon and the moms are really doing the real work, which is raising that entire family, the kids and that husband. So hats off to the mamas. But there's a story about Kathleen I want to kind of like, and I'm going to get to her accomplishments. I don't want to go into depth. But there's a quote I remember hearing about Kathleen and her mom. And I believe Kathleen was going to go, I don't know if it was the school she was attending or she was going to work with someone. I wasn't sure. But they told her mom, yeah, we're going to have her do this so we can help her with this and so and so. And Kathleen's mama looked at him and said, child, why you going to fix something that ain't broke? What you trying to do? She already got it. What are you trying to change? And I think Miss Battle, and I want to kind of correlate this to Miss Riri Grist, they had a very similar delivery, I think, and uniqueness and that timbre, that coloratura, that very kind of almost angelic quality to the voice. Like when you're thinking of like, Judgment Day, who you want to listen to? I mean, you could either go dramatic and be like, oh Lord, are you coming? Or you want to go Kathleen to kind of be like, ease me in, Lord, but then give it to me later. So it's like Kathleen kind of definitely made a name for herself as a coloratura soprano, and her repertoire extended from lyric as well as to coloratura. She has been known, I think there was what's his name, Varney, Charles P. Varney, who was a mentor of her. He referred to as this tiny little thing that can sing so beautifully, and to the point where, like, she's been surrounded by so many people in the church that they're literally letting this young woman know, like, you have a gift. This is literally a gift from God that, like, and she sits in that realm to me with Leontyne. She sits in that realm to me with Jesse, and don't even get me started on their concert on spirituals. Like, that literally was just, you're seeing these two beautiful divas and these beautiful, it was just an experience how I wish I could have been sitting there listening to that, and just literally getting my soul together. Like, I feel like if you were spiritually damaged that day and you were at that audience, some healing definitely went down. But Kathleen Battle, to me, and she's done great works. Even I think there was a Strauss performance I've heard her sing, and a few Strauss performances. Her Voices of Spring. If you go on YouTube and hear her Voices of Spring, and she's wearing that beautiful red getup, and there's something almost playful when she sings. Kind of this, you see the joy in her face when it's being done. But for Kathleen, for me, what I think of Kathleen when I first think of Kathleen is her Baroque stuff, and I mean, you could say I'm biased because it's like, that is the repertoire I love. But Kathleen's Cara Selve, Kathleen's Ombra Mai Fu, Kathleen's Purcell's music for a while, Kathleen's interpretation of Cleopatra, literally the list goes on and on. She literally has an album, her Bach cantata albums. It's just beautiful. It's timeless. So so I would have to say, like, even her album with the duet she had with the trumpetist, it just was something. Yeah, it was just, she has done so much. So what do you think of when you think of Kathleen?
I met her before. I mean, the voice is just sublime. I don't know too many other words to describe it. The spirituals concert, fun fact, one of my teachers from the Voice Choir Harlem was in the choir when they sang that. My favorite Kathleen stuff, I would have to say, is her, of course, her Zerbinetta. That was another powerful cast, that Ariadna cast. I was with her, just woman. I think Tatiana Troyanos was the composer, and I believe James King was in it as well. But Yeah, her Zerbinetta, because that shows off her coloratura and it shows off the very, very higher parts of her voice. But I want to say the first thing I ever heard her sing was either when we performed Carmina Burana with her, or I think I heard her sing the role of blonde in the Abduction Mozart. And that's one of the higher Mozart roles. I like her. I love her. Pamina. Her Pamina
Yes.
was
Beautiful, the magic flute.
gorgeous. I think I heard her Semele. It was good, but I feel like she excels more in like the romantic or contemporary-ish repertoire.
Mm-hmm.
My favorite, um, I think, was her Sophie in Der Rosenkavalier.
Mm.
I don't think they have the whole role commercially available, but in however, there are several versions of her singing the trio of the probably one of the most beautiful pieces in all of opera. The ending trio with I know one time she did it with Renee Fleming and Federico von Stade. Another time she did it with Kiri Takanawa and um, and Sophie von Otter. But
Yes, yes, yes.
the entire role itself is just very Kathleen Battle. Like it's soaring, it's Strauss. So the music is soaring. He gives her, times where he just gives, the voice a chance to excel at those beautiful, like high notes. I mean the voice itself is, I mean, it's angelic. Even when she did the Vangelis with Jesse Norman. Just everything about it. Even when her return to
For
the
her spirituals concert.
the spirituals concert, um, voice still gorgeous, still gorgeous. As we know, there's controversy around her. Perfectly fine. Whatever, you agree with it, don't agree with it, whatever. I just wish that there was a way that we could get some master classes out of her. Um, before God calls her home. But yeah, I would love to hear her do a master class.
Yeah, no, there's something about Kathleen. Like, as I'm looking at the roster of roles that she's done, and this isn't just talking about either just the choral and symphonic, but this is like going into the actual, like her operatic roles. She kind of had her hands in different pots. And that's something that I think that we owe a great deal of acknowledgement to. I mean, from looking at her rosters, from moving into Mozart to Donizetti, to Strauss, to Rossini, to Handel, to Verdi, Massenet, to Haydn, and to ending with the Shepherd and a Wagner opera. It's literally, you're seeing this, and to me, a flexible artist. And then I think too, and I'm not saying, because I want to kind of just maybe touch on, and I know that's probably what a lot of listeners are probably interested, especially if you're an opera lover, is kind of that whole back shadow of controversy behind Mrs. Norman. I mean, I'm sorry, Mrs. Battle. I'm sorry, I'm literally got the spirituals in my mind still. My soul's still there. But literally, I remember I watched the interview, the supposed interview that makes her seem as if like she's this difficult person to work with.
Oh, the one she
But when she walked out, and in my opinion, I mean, I probably would have handled it a different way. But I mean, when you're constantly being bombarded with what the world and the media is saying about you, I mean, I just wish, and I think we spoke about this one time too, that we wish that like somebody like Auntie Price pull Kathleen to the side to said, hey, I understand what's going on, but this is how we should move. Because just the same way that she said to our good singer and Simon is definitely having this sense of there's a certain way, unfortunately, we have to move in this industry. You know, there's a certain way of, even though we know some things are not right and they are unfair, I think I'm the firm believer of that Southern saying, baby, you get more with honey than you do with vinegar.
You get more bees with honey. Yep.
So it's kind of, you know, I have, as much as I've heard about Kathleen along the way, and I mean, I've heard some other stories, but you know, I really can't speak on much because I have not been a witness there to on these accounts, so I'm only hearing from word of mouth. But my interaction with Miss Battle has been a pleasant one, and she will always in my mind when I'm having a bad day or if it's rainy outside, I just put on, you know, some stuff from her. I love listening to her Bach cantatas. I also recommend that on Spotify. Go ahead, look for Miss Battle. Look at the research. There is so much music available. So yeah, I could honestly say I've had some. We salute you again too, Miss Battle. Wishing you the best. We wish to see you more. Like Terrence said, giving some master classes out there, handing that torch off of how far you climbed on that mountain, and just know that you know the next ones are ready to either continue to propel you to move forward. Because, like you said, the voice is still there. Don't let somebody age you. You already know. You already know when it comes to us. You could be 80 years old looking 40. So,
I mean, luckily, she before she stopped singing in front of audiences professionally, I should say, she recorded a lot, so she does have a nice body of work that's still out there, very diverse, whether you're
mm-hmm.
or Baroque cantatas or
To Mozart, to Bellini, Strauss.
Mozart. My favorite album of hers outside of spirituals is her bel canto album, when she
Mm.
does when she essays the things that we were waiting for her to sing. So she does the mad scene from Lucia. She does the mad scene from Funambula. So she do, which we already know that she was in talks of performing those roles. Luckily, she
Mm-hmm.
recorded the arias and the mad scene. So yeah, there's a lot of you know stuff out there you can listen to. And we're gonna move right along. And next up we have the beautiful, the lovely, the ever so dramatic. Not who you think it is. The flair, the hair.
Mm-hmm.
None other than Miss Grace Bumbry. Now,
Yes.
I mean, how could you not love you some Grace Bumbry? Uh just the poise, the funny. They released it. She just did a master class and they released
Mm-hmm.
it. It was so good. I encourage everybody to go find it. It was so good. Um, because you have people out there who know how to teach and to lead with love, but
Mm-hmm.
can still tell you what you need to work on. Constructive criticism. Um, so we're not gonna do all the boring stuff because the lady is extremely decorated. All the way from her Paris debut as Mary's to I believe her Metropolitan debut was as Ebony and Don Carlo. But I think when
Mm-hmm.
you think Grace Bumbry, the more controversial topic has always okay. Well, let me do one more thing first. She's another one who knocked down doors because she was the first Black singer to sing a lead role in Bayreuth. Simon Estes was the first Black man. She was the first Black person,
Mm-hmm.
in which she did Venus and Wagner's in Bayreuth, and she sang Venus and Wagner's Tannhäuser. Um, and the crazy part about that is that she auditioned for them singing an Italian aria. That's crazy. But she picked a really good one. I believe she sang O Don Fatale. And if all those of you all who know O Don Fatale, it gets the job done. So I think the one what I want to focus on more or less, is we always get caught up in the prestige, and I like to concentrate on the voice. So the biggest controversy that this lady has garnered, not good or bad, just or indifferent, was her switch from singing mezzo soprano to singing soprano.
And
So
then back to basso.
well, I mean, subsequently. Um,
Mm-hmm.
for all of you who knows Grace, her bio, she started off singing roles like Amneris and Eboli, Azucena. Of course, she sang a fabulous Carmen, performed a
Mm-hmm.
fabulous Carmen with one of my favorite tenors, John Vickers. Um, and then around 1970, she started to transition into singing her soprano roles. And the first role she sang as a soprano was Salome,
Mm-hmm.
Strauss's Salome. Now, for those of you who know the score, when you look at the role itself, it's not high as far as it has like high C's, D's, and nothing like that. It just sits at a higher place. So a lot of the stuff she was already singing had the top notes. She just had to adjust into singing them more often. So she sang Salome. I've heard her sing. I've heard the Salome. It's okay. It's not my favorite of her soprano roles. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but she also sang Tosca. She also did Gioconda. She also did uh, Norma, which that was one that a lot of people were afraid of her doing. But she actually did Norma. There's a recording of her singing Norma with Florence Kovar as Aldagiza, which is we don't have a lot of recordings of Florence, so that was a blessing to have. But my
Mm-hmm.
favorite of her soprano roles is probably one that people voted their worst, and that was
What was it?
Abigail in Nabucco.
Why would people say that's a bad
I'm gonna tell you why,
performance?
because there's an aria, her opening aria. She ascends to a high C and then
Mm-hmm.
drops 2 octaves lower to another C. So, way up there to way down there, and you can hear the register switch.
Mm.
We're singers, we all crack. People judged that one little thing, and I said, "Oh, that was the worst one." The rest of the opera, she sang fabulously. I loved it. That was probably one of my favorite, because I like a role that doesn't make the singer feel comfortable per se, but it shows what the entire voice can do. And so she
Yeah.
sang, high C's all the way down to the low, B flats, A flats, the lower portion of her voice. Another soprano role she did Lady Macbeth. It was cool. Um, but yeah, it was definitely her Aida was good too, and it was crazy because she
Mm-hmm.
was a well-known, probably in most people's top five Marys. So to double back and to sing Aida was crazy, and she had said in an interview that one time she was backstage and she was waiting for her part, and she heard Amneris' music and almost ran out on stage because she was so used to singing Amneris, and she was at the time she was singing Aida. My favorite role she sang as a mezzo, it would probably be Amneris. Some people are gonna
Mary's.
say, yeah. Some people are gonna say, because I like that role in its entirety. Um, Most people are gonna say Eboli, but they're only gonna say Eboli because of Odon Fatale. The rest of the role is kind of boring, and it sits medium low. Amneris is medium, and it goes up every now and again. But that was her role that she coached with Lottie Lehman. So that was the role. You can tell that she know. I mean, all of her roles are good, but you can tell that that's her role. Like you can
Mm-hmm.
tell that that's her role, and I think it's because she started that role so early. I think um, when she debuted, I know when she did Ten Hoys, I think she was only 24. So when she
Oh,
did
wow.
Aries at the Paris Opera, she had to be like 22, maybe 22. Um, but yeah, people always said, "Oh, I think she was just a mezzo with some high notes. Some people think she was
like that, like a mezzo with an extension.
a mezzo with an extension. Some people felt that she should have never made the switch. Tomato, tomato. I do think that like there are some roles that I think mezzos can do comfortably. I do think Zalame was a good one. Tosca, you know what it is. If you know the score, the second act is, if you can't sing that second act, and she could sing it all. Don't get me wrong. She sang it all. But when you hear a traditional soprano sing it, and then you compare it, then you can kind of hear, like, I think Tosca kind of stretched her a little bit. And the same with Norma. I mean, Norma is Norma. Like Norma, that's a soprano role. That's and it has coloratura in it. But she
how
did
did you
pretty
feel?
good. She did pretty good.
How'd you feel about her performances as like Delilah, Cassandra, and Les Troyens? How did you feel? I feel like she excelled there.
Well, I mean, Cassandra is one of those roles that is really a low soprano role, or you can call it a high mezzo role. That's what Jesse Norman's saying when she debuted at the Met. You know, it's Cassandra. Yeah, it's a low soprano role. You can really call it a mezzo soprano role, honestly. Now Delilah, that's more in like mezzo contralto realm, because that role does sit really low more often. I like her voice when, especially the younger her, when she sang mezzo. The medium was very creamy. You know, it was very very it was very good, but it wasn't my favorite because Delilah only has one type of singing in it. That's my thing. Like Delilah is good, but I feel like Delilah is so easy for her. I like to hear the thrill in the voice, and I feel like Neris of the mezzo roles, it just felt a little more thrilling for her. It could be the music. It could be the music. It could, because Sanson doesn't compose the same way Verdi composes, so it could just be the music itself. But mezzo wise, I like Neris over Delilah. Now the Carmen was fabulous. Like they have it on video on YouTube. You know, she was in her little red dress, jumping on the table. The Carmen was everything. But vocally, I felt like that was really easy for her because her voice, even when she was younger, her voice still sat at a higher. She always had this higher extension, or what people will say, a true dramatic mezzo soprano extension, because some people say mezzo should have solid B flats, B naturals, and high Cs. Some people don't. Depending on tomato, whatever you want to say.
I think it depends on the teacher. No, I had a teacher one time who told me, she said very similar. She's like, it doesn't matter what voice type. She's like, I don't care if you were a contralto. You need to have that high C. You need to make sure.
There are certain roles that if I was billed a contralto, unless I just couldn't sing it, I would have been singing Amneris and because you don't have the roles that are billed contralto. There are not a lot of them, and the operas are not performed like that, with the exception of Carmen. And I don't even think Carmen is billed as a contralto. It is, to me, it is a contralto role because the role is not high. I think the highest note that's written may be like an A flat. So it's not written. I mean, no, excuse me. It is a B natural, but it's like a throwaway. So it's not like it's a held long high B. You just tap it and throw it away. But the roles that are billed contralto, there are not a lot of them, so you wouldn't get much work. So if
what I would have loved to see her in?
What?
I would have loved to see her in Giulio Cesare. I would have loved to see her play the.
I don't know about that.
No, the contralto role. The contralto role
Cornelia?
of Cornelia and Sesto.
That's too boring for her.
I'm talking about now. It's like it would be kind of. Yes.
You know what role I think she could do? She could do the Duchess role in La Fille du Regiment, And she could
Mm-hmm.
do, I think Stephanie Black is doing that now, or did it recently. Or she could do the role of the prioress in the dialogues of the Carmelites. Um,
Mm.
I would love
No,
to see
the
that.
I think the first time I heard Mrs. Bumbry definitely was on something Baroque. It either was Handel's Israel in Egypt, or I think his Judas Maccabeus.
One of the two.
And yeah, so it's this like that's why when I'm thinking of Handel and her doing Cornelia, it's like there's certain I feel like those are those timeless roles that like you either can play when you're younger or if middle of age or a little older. And I feel like that would be like a walk in the park. That'll literally be her sipping some and next, you know. It's and also I want to also kind of like have a quote that I've been reading about Miss Bumbry, her advice to young singers. And I think it's beautiful. I'm just going to shed some light to that. Mrs. Bumbry says, um, her advice to young singers is, you all must strive for excellence. That is the answer. If you strive for excellence, that means that you are determined. You will find a way to get to your goal, even if it means to having to turn down some really fantastic or great offers. You, as a performer, you have to live with that, as you have to live with yourself. So I think that seeing the fruits of her labor, she's been able to have a career that most most women in our industry would have to do now, which is sometimes when you don't find work as a soprano, a lot of sopranos kind of venture into moving into the mezzo repertoire. So it's this ongoing theme of having some work. Granted, Mrs. Bumbry has been given that innate ability to kind of have two hats on. Kind of like I'll wear this when it needs to be, but then I can also wear this other hat and kind of have this transition. And I understand people can have their controversy onto saying, you know, well, you either should pick one or the other. I don't think that music works that way. I think that we cannot categorize our voices to say and put limits on voices as to what a singer should sing or should not sing. Same thing with Jessie. People could say the same thing. Well, she kind of gives me more mezzo vibes and actual soprano vibes. You know, she capped out kind of here around a B. She kind of didn't venture up to, you know, that's fine. That's fine. That doesn't mean, but I mean, if we're really talking about tessitura and we're really talking about what pieces demand, who knows? You know, there's certain soprano arias that I'm sure that Miss Bumbry has taken on that because of her physiological buildup, this allows for her to do that. It's not as if that she's compensating or trying. It's just the gift is the gift. And I think that if we move out of the realm of just assuming what because you're categorized as so and so, this is the rep that you must sing. Just like how you were telling me, you've been in boys choirs where you've been hearing some basses that probably could rival some sopranos out here once they do a switch and move up there. You know what I mean? So I think that that's something that I think moving forward would be beneficial to our industry is if we stopped boxing so many performers as artists and saying, this is where your voice sits, this is what you should be singing, and negating certain parts. I mean, like, even to go off topic, like, I feel that Grace Bumbry kind of has this quality to the voice, and I'm not saying they sound similar, but I'm just talking about like untapped vocal abilities, you know, that she's unlocked by switching. You know, I don't want to compare her to Awa Podals, but there's certain things about I get a creamy texture, like you said, from Grace Bumbry. I get this feeling that she's not afraid to go to the extreme. Like hearing the whole thing about jumping to this high soprano C and then jumping down 2 octaves. Okay, and granted, at that time they could say what they want to say, but why does that negate from her artistry and her capabilities? She is a phenomenal person. You literally just see this person who's a light out there. And when I think about that and a joy is Grace Bumbry. You know, you're getting that feeling of just like, oh, she has it. It's just like she falls into that category without a doubt as the list of African American um, female singers who are pioneers in our industry. She sits proudly with Miss Leontyne. She sits proudly with Miss Norman. She sits proudly with Miss Riri, with Kathleen, with Shirley Verray. She sits, they sit. It's just whenever I think of it, you know what? I always think of the muses from Hercules. Literally. Like I'm just like, imagine if, you know, that group of no one's better than the other, but they're so distinctive and so beautiful in their own originality that it's like this is what makes them who they are. So we bow down to you, Miss Bumbry.
Yep, and she's still doing master classes and things like that. If she does
Yeah.
one near me, I'm going. I don't care if it's I miss class, whatever. If she does one near me, I'm going to go. That's just it is what it is. So I think you're on to your last one, so we can wrap this up.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so the individual, and I saved this for the last because I feel that even though there are singers that are before her time, I feel that she made that staple because we got to physically see it. There are recordings of it. We get to listen to how this individual sound, and just her sheer bravery. The person who I'm speaking on is Mrs. Marion Anderson. The thing about Marion Anderson is I think that she is that artist that if you are a singer of color, there is no way you can bypass not knowing about Ms. Marion Anderson. And a time in our country, and I mean, we're still seeing the remnants of the outcome of institutionalized racism and just adversities that people of color have been facing since this country, since the first boat docked on the shores of America. That performance that she gave at the White House and being the first African American to ever even sing with the Metropolitan Opera, she is the standard that she put of what Black excellence is, should be, and should progress from. I can only imagine the fear she faced deep down that you're trying to perform something that you love to do, and you literally have people hate you in the world because of something, again, that you have no control over, which is the color and pigmentation of your skin. I feel that she is such an important figure in the struggle for African American artists, kind of like this vicar of overcoming racial prejudices. When I think about, you know, her performing, I think it was in 1939 at the Lincoln Memorial, where she sang in a crowd that was integrated, about 75,000 people. I can only imagine that fear she was feeling. It's heartbreaking in a way, but it's so inspirational. Now, Marion Anderson wasn't a voice that I feel like when we think of treble voices, you know, we either kind of sit into the realms of soprano or mezzo, and it's very rare. Sometimes I feel we get to really talk about a good contralto. And I think that when I see Marion Anderson, especially as a countertenor, she was kind of one of those voices I was told to listen to. Like in an early, you listen to some Marion Anderson, you'll kind of hear, you know, what you're supposed to be doing, like whether it's below the staff, that middle register, kind of listening to kind of see this bridge between and building this fullness, this regal, this eloquent, just refined sound. She, to me, she also sits as another enigma, like where I don't believe in coincidences. She was literally, I mean, I haven't seen any other singers, but she literally was awarded 24 honorary doctoral degrees. When you think about it, I think she holds one from Howard, she holds ones from Temple, from Smith. There's some HBCUs that just definitely just, you know, just going to call for Ms. Anderson's accomplishments. And I mean, they just continue to keep going on. She won a Handel medallion for for Baroque repertoire that she has brought light to. It's just I would spend all day talking about the accomplishments of Miss Marion Anderson. Not only politically, her artistry, and to think too that she literally was an example and inspiration to both the incomparable Leontyne Price as well as Jesse Norman. I believe as well too, she to me, when you think of a pyramid, like that bottom structure, it's like I do somewhat feel that our core and our heart stands with Marion. You know what I mean, Terrence?
I think she was my only thing that I didn't like with the whole Met thing was that, remember, she sang at the Met when she was 58.
Yeah.
So she was, I mean, don't get me wrong, she should have been in the middle end of her career singing at the Met at 58. Not that should not have
Yeah.
been the first time. And some people say, well, that's probably why she wasn't, she didn't sing that often, because when you're older in age, maybe the voice starts to decline. I'm not saying that was what happened to her, but I would imagine, with the unfortunate circumstances in this country, it would have been beautiful having her debut at 30 and hearing what the voice was like at 30 and 35 and 40 and 45 and 50. She debuted when she was 58.
Yeah.
Which probably made a difference in what she sang, because maybe the voice couldn't handle something a little more subsequent, something a little more heavier, or something a little more fuller, versus singing Eureka. Now Eureka has a nice aria, but it's not something that I would have loved to hear her sing Amneris. I would have
Yes.
loved to hear her sing Azucena, another witch with a main witch, versus Ulrika. Ulrika's like, okay, I'll do Ulrika. You can't find somebody, I'll do it. But it's not a lead role. It's a secondary role.
Yeah.
And that's the only thing. I mean, granted, yes, there are plenty of recordings of Marion Anderson singing spirituals, and some concert stuff, but her operatic life took a real hit because of racism and segregation.
I think that was actually literally a whole bunch of untapped, phenomenal, life-changing artistry that could have been implemented into our legacy of libraries. You know what I mean? Kind of that, like you were even saying, like, imagine if she had the opportunity to do this. Imagine if she was warranted the same opportunities as her counterparts during the time. Because I mean, at the end of the day, when we're listening to a recording at that time, or whether they were recording with the use of a wax horn or whatever type of technology they were using at the time, when we're listening to something, I don't know about you, whether it's on an album or if I'm listening to my Spotify playlist, my least concern for the first and foremost is the color of that person's skin.
I agree.
It's like I'm trying to see, okay, what are you trying to express with your artistry? What is your voice saying? Then maybe down the line, if you're thinking, oh, where is this person? It really just, where are they from? What is their background? What has produced this artist? And I think that I just wish, and I mean, she's done amazing things. Like specifically, I remember reading about Marion Anderson being a Connecticut native. I believe at one point in her life, she actually ended up living in Danbury, Connecticut, which I think sits roughly about 35 miles away, 35, 40 miles away from the city that I'm originally from. And not only that, her the sense of philanthropy that she's had towards the arts and other singers and students specifically that have not been given the same, whether it is because of race, it's just she is whether we like it or not. And that's what I feel, unfortunately. My heart goes out to Marion Anderson because of the opportunity she was robbed and the things that we will not experience with her. But I am forever grateful because my greats and legends that, still I have to listen to today for sometimes reassurance or inspiration are, even Leontyne Price and Jesse Norman. They said that they owe such a great debt to Marion. So you can only imagine being of a different time, how still her influence today has a hold on singers, I don't know. It's just something about her, Terrence, where I get like great auntie vibes. You know what I mean? Like it's just kind of like she comes to the she comes to the function. She really don't say much. You know what to expect from auntie. The food is always going to be great, and she'll get you together with needs. Like that type of person that gets you together without having to say anything. You look at the accomplishments that Marion Anderson has done for us, and you already know, baby, I see the struggle alone. And for you, and if you at that time could face that adversity, and you at that time could be seen as an enemy, just like even to the arts, kind of like, why is she? It's like she doesn't understand that she is those major boulders that fell into those puddles. It wasn't those little pebbles. That Marion Anderson is a boulder. And then it's kind of like how I'm thinking of, and I'm not trying to get too graphic, and kind of thinking of kind of like that Greek story of when Zeus was eaten by his father, and he didn't want any of the gods to kind of like, come through. And then it kind of had to have this severance for this birth of great things to happen.
Mhm.
I see Marion Anderson as that catapult of just greatness, is because you see through those sacrifices and tumultuous events she had to go through. The fruits of her labor are just immeasurable. It's just like they're immeasurable. There's just no way. I think that if she was to honestly sit back and kind of look at her act of bravery, where it got us today, I think she would feel that she lived a complete, full, well-rounded life at the end of it. It's just like great things came. I mean, through you, Marion, we got our George Shirley's. Through you, we got our Simon Estes, our Riri Greasts, our Kathleen Battles. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, and last but certainly not least, I'm going to wrap this up nice and easy and smooth. Is the one, the only, as the people in the industry call her mother, Leontyne Price. And
yes.
While we are grateful for everybody's contributions, I think what made Leontyne different was not that she was better than the rest of the people who came before us. It was that she was really considered the first Black prima donna. She was the one who rivaled Maria Callas.
Mm-hmm.
That when you think the epitome of a prima donna, in this music industry, in those days you would have thought Maria Callas. I think nowadays you probably would consider maybe like Renee Fleming, but back then it was Maria Callas, and then you had Leontyne Price. Now there's been a long debate on who's better, Leontyne versus Maria. I will say this: who lost their voice first?
Ooh.
Okay. I love both ladies. I think, both ladies are great. But one chose to retire and one was forced to retire. There's a big difference. She chose to stop singing in 1985 as she retired on her own terms. But we're not going to go there. So we all know Miss Price is decorated lovely. So as I like to focus on, we will focus on the voice. She possesses they consider her a spinto soprano, but by her own admission in multiple interviews, in her very beautiful Laurel, Mississippi accent, she will tell you she's a lyric soprano. So she considers herself a lyric soprano. She does have what I consider thrust in the voice. So when I say thrust, I mean it's something that sends the voice over. It has thrust.
With effort, without any effort, effortless.
Well, without pushing, without having to push,
Mm-hmm.
no, without hammering down on your voice.
Yep.
She considers herself a Mozart Verdian soprano. That's what she out of her mouth said.
Mm-hmm.
Me personally, my favorite two roles of hers are both Puccini. I don't know why she can sing some damn Puccini. My number one favorite role from her is Tosca. My number two is Madame Butterfly. If you
Yes.
need a lesson in beautiful singing, please listen to Butterfly's entrance. Now, in her era of singing, the singing from everybody was top. Well, from most people was top class. I believe that recording of, if you can get it, it's the red one, the RCA recording. It's the one with Franco. I'm not Franco Corelli. It's the one with what's my other Richard Tucker as Pinkerton. That opening scene, and she float that high D flat. I mean, you can go home after that. You can go home after that.
You got your money's worth.
Truly, you could go home after that. You really could. And then in Tosca, the way she wasn't the actress that Maria Callas is. I will give Maria Callas, like, if I was looking at a performance, I would pick Maria Callas. If I was listening to it, I would pick Leontyne. The drama in the voice, and when I say drama, I don't mean loud. I mean the drama in the voice. The voice is telling you the mood of the character. When she sang, you don't have to listen to the whole opera. Listen to about 30 minutes of Act 2. And it'll tell you everything you need to know. Everything you need to know. But I would have liked to have been a fly on the wall when that debut performance happened. When she debuted at the Met, she's debuted her and Franco Corelli. For those of y'all know, I know y'all know who that is. That man don't play. When it comes to tenors, y'all can have Pavarotti. You give me Franco Corelli. Love me some Pavarotti for my lyric stuff. But for the dramatic tenor stuff, you give me Corelli. Corelli and Leontyne Price made their debut the same night. To be a fly on those walls, they said the ovations, the standing ovations, the curtain calls were insane. As I would imagine.
For Il Trovatore, right?
Yeah, Il Trovatore, as one would imagine. Corelli and Leontyne. I mean, you don't get better than that. Like, you don't get better than that. Like, what does one want after that? Like, that D'amor su alia rose, I'm sure she floated the hell out of them high B flats and those high C's. Loved it. Now, I'm going to touch on something that was very important in her career. A couple of things that were very important in her career that don't get mentioned enough. First of all, well, I think most people know that she helped create the role of Cleopatra, and Anthony and Samuel Barber's Anthony and Cleopatra, to which they her and Justino Diaz opened the new Met, when they moved uptown, they opened the house with that opera. I heard the opera, not a big fan. It was just too much going. It's just not my thing. It's too much going on, but they sounded great. But it was just the opera itself. It has nothing to do with the singers. It was just it's too much going on. But another thing, she sang the role of Minnie in La Fanciulla del West. That's normally taken by a dramatic soprano. And they said she sounded fine, but she said that she felt it was too strenuous for her voice. And so she never sang it again. Leontyne Price, I forgot, I want to say she was in her 60s, sang one of the most difficult soprano arias out there, better than people in their 20s. Zweitzer, what is it? Zweitzer Brautnacht, I think from the Egyptische Helena. She sang
Mm-hmm.
that. I mean, just glorious, glorious. But the reason I brought up the L'Infanchula del West is you have to know, while I agree with what Yvonne said earlier, I disagree to a certain extent because you as a singer have to know your capabilities. There's a reason why Fox and some people sing certain repertoire because certain repertoire fits the qualities of their voice. Now, you
Mm-hmm.
shouldn't be limited to that, but you do need to know what you are capped at singing. If you are a soubrette soprano, no, you should not be trying to sing Brunhilde in Götter der Maruk because your voice is not going to get over that 120 piece Wagnerian orchestra, and you're going to push and you're going to lose your voice. So while I do
Yeah.
agree with you, I do disagree. Everything is not for everybody, and just because you can do something doesn't mean you should do it. You should
Mm-hmm.
always, as Mother said, you should always sing on your interest and not your capita. She says that in plenty of interviews. And I think what she means by that is you should give 100% effort, 100% emotion, all of that stuff. But you should
Mm-hmm.
not be singing to the brink of your vocal, to your vocal,
Yeah.
because you won't have any voice. And as
Yeah.
Martin knows, when you're in rehearsals, you don't just sing thing once. You sometimes have to sing, run throughs 2 and 3 times. So if you're
Yeah.
singing and putting all that pressure on your chords, you know, maybe you're fortunate enough to have thicker chords, but our vocal cords are very thin. So you shouldn't be singing forcefully 100% of the time. And I think that role that she said she sang it one night, and because she had done so many great performances, and she's Leontyne Price, they let I guess the person who was splitting the role with her, finish the rest of the performances because she knew that that role was too vocally taxing for her. Even singing it carefully was going to be too much. And I think
Yeah.
that's very, 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 very important because a lot of times, especially when you go out here and you dibble and dabble and you get agents and da, 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 remember they make money when you work. So
Yep.
it's very important, and we'll try to get a podcast where we can speak to agents and other singers who can better explain it or explain it in a little more depth. Some singers have been met with early demises because they sang things that got them paid. Yes, true enough, but it cost them money in the long run because now their voice is in shambles, and if they can
Yeah.
sing, their repertoire is really limited because they've messed up certain, portions um, of
Yeah.
their voice.
It's literally a robbery of their livelihood. That's something that I think a lot of singers don't realize, and I'm so happy that such a legend and someone who we consider to kind of be, a true trailblazer, to really give that piece of advice to singers. I think that's something that we should kind of see a lot more with singers trying to incorporate is that yes, you've reached a level of success. Yes, you are held into such high regards, but you need to remember somebody right behind you. And you could either choose to remain with your back turned, or you can choose to remain with an arm open and extended, so that we are not setting our singers up and young singers up for a road of demise and frustration and money, because it's not only are you paying money to learn the lessons, then you're going to have to pay money to go and fix the things that you kind of messed up along the way. And there's another thing too
If they
that
can
I
be
think,
fixed.
if they can be fixed, because I mean, once the damage is done, sometimes it is very difficult to kind of get back to where you were prior. um that goes to show even what you touched upon too. And I know we've seen those memes where you literally see the tessitura is too damn high. Okay, that's the thing too. Just because you are of a voice type does not mean that your voice likes to sit there or it likes to dwell there. There are voices that, yes, they have these capabilities, these attributes to the voice, but it does not mean that they like to sit and enjoy. It doesn't mean that that's kind of the repertoire that should be in demand. Now, a word of advice that I would give to a singer, and this is speaking on Miss Leontyne and her advice is given. We have been blessed to live in a time where if we want to go listen to something, we have like instantaneous access. I feel that if you feel you share certain vocal capabilities as Miss Price or Miss Grease or Miss Battle, Miss Norman, look at their repertoire. Look at to see what they have chosen to sing and what makes and where their voice sounds the most organic or natural or effortless. Even though you can fall into that dark spot or dark place, I would rather say, of just, oh, since she did it, I have to do it. We're the same voice type. It doesn't work that way. Like look at Leontyne in this situation. Yes, my voice can do it, but for some reason right now my voice is not suited for that piece of music. It doesn't negate or say I'm not good enough, or it doesn't negate and say, it just means that your voice is going to tell you. You could either sit there and listen to it, or you could literally sit there and kind of like over time just put wear and tear and kind of damage your voice permanently. But as a singer and as an artist, the most responsible thing that you can do for yourself is to say no when you know you need to say no. It does not mean that you're not going to get more opportunities to come. It just means that what's meant for you is meant for you, and you have to with your best ability. And I mean, you're hearing from the lips of the great herself saying, yeah, there could have been money there. There could have been an opportunity there, but I had to do what was right by my craft. I'd rather have, what's more important, growth or capital at the end of the day. So yeah.
Excellent point. Excellent point. So I think at this point we are going to close the episode. Thank you guys for hanging out with us today. Yes. It was a long one, but it definitely needed to be done. We will definitely be coming with more people, because there are a slew of people, pioneers and things of that nature that we didn't get a chance to mention. Don't worry, we know we are not leaving anybody out. We just have to do them in stages.
Yeah.
Cissy Retta Jones and Elizabeth Taylor Greenfield and Shirley Verred and Thomas Young, Vincent Cole, Florence Covard, the list goes, Barbara Hendricks, on and on and on and on and on. Gwendolyn Bradley, Gwendolyn Kilbrew, Harlan Blackwell. I could go on for all day. But we're gonna do them in stages. That way we can give at least them a nice chunk of time versus trying to do a long list where we have to like run through. We can stop, dissect, get thoughts on, and all of that good stuff. So until we meet again, thank you guys for joining us on this installment of OperaTuneiTea, episode 2, part 1 of the Legacies.
Yes. Thank you for tuning in.
Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. I know it sounds corny, but I gotta say it.
Yes. Get the word out.